Everybody, welcome to another episode of the Bald Avenger Show. Today, I am super pumped. I met a gentleman it was about 3 weeks ago at a really fantastic event. And we just hit it off. We ended up doing some cool things together. We flew through the air in Las Vegas together, and then we ended up going to a really great show, sitting in the first row.
That's right.
And his wife got, sort of picked on a little bit by the by the comedian that was on the stage. I don't even know if he was a comedian. I think that guy really just loved being mean for a living.
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
he definitely picked on us, and it was pretty funny. I wish I'd seen it from a different perspective. Because it was embarrassing to us, but I'm sure it was pretty funny to everybody else.
It was. I mean, it added a lot of value to me. So thank you.
You're welcome.
And I was sitting right next to you, so I was glad. I was just one away from being picked on, but he didn't choose to do that. So we had a lot of great fun, and this show is going to be primarily focused around business. We've done a lot of shows, and they just kind of it ends up going towards the passion and the love and the talent of the person that I happen to be speaking with. And Travis has done some amazing things. Most of you that are in business, if you don't, just Google the name, but it was Kajabi. He's one of the co-founders of Kajabi. I'll let him talk a little bit about that. One of the great things that we do with this show is we really are trying to inform the audience and deliver value. It's not necessarily about, any of us being like, oh, look at what we did. It's more around the idea that if you're interested in business, if you're interested in a unique conversation around the idea of politics, if you're interested in vitality from a perspective of having more energy to be able to do your own life, and to really talk about philanthropic, and charitable sort of giving, because I think that's in the soul of everybody else, the soul of pretty much everybody that's out there. This is really about a unique perspective so that you can apply these things to your life and actually improve your own position. And one of the greatest things that I love about Travis is that when I asked him the question about, what he'd done, a lot of people get in and they're like, oh, we did this, and I'm living in this big house and I'm doing all this kind of stuff. The very first thing that Travis said to me was, he said, we've helped people make over $600 million. And that instantaneously, aside from the time we spent together and the meals that we shared and that kind of stuff, learning that him and his wife are very servant-minded, very, very humble people for all of that they've done. The fact that that's one of the very first things that he would say he's proud of, really speaks to the conversation that we're going to have today. And then he also, the book that he wrote, you can see on the flyer, or the stand behind him, You Inc. The book is really, literally, genuinely, it's even titled You.
Yeah, that's right. It's about you. You don't even know it, but it's about you.
It's about you. Exactly right. You've been married for 3 years to your beautiful wife. I met her. She's hilarious. And beautiful and talented and all that kind of stuff. So shout out to her. 2 kids. And one of the other things that I love that you said was you're just, you didn't have any contacts. You didn't, when you got into business, you spent 20 years, you've been doing software. I'm taking away everything that you could say about yourself, by the way. So
that's good. You did a good job.
But 20 years, you spent 20 years. And a lot of people, they dabble, right? They dabble in different things. And I think that that's a big problem, a big challenge. You dabble when you don't have a specific outcome that you want to achieve. You dabble when you are afraid of failing. You dabble when you're not committed to a specific outcome. And one of the things, I love about you is that you decided, I'm going into software. You spent 20 years in it. You paid your dues. You came from cubicle land, and then you ended up going out and creating this thing that helped, obviously people make $600 million from directly using your product. And that's just a phenomenal story. So I just want the audience to give you a great big warm welcome. Follow him. We'll give you some contact details at the end of the show, but just proud to introduce my friend, Travis Rosser. Welcome to the show, sir.
Awesome. Thank you. I am honored to be on the show. It's just a cool opportunity to talk to people and make them realize that they have a business inside of them. That is my number one passion, is to make everybody realize that there's a business that they could start.
So talk to us a little bit about your journey. I mean, everybody that's listening to this is somewhere on the spectrum, right? We talk, there's so many people that are out there saying, there's one there's one size fits all kind of a scenario, but there's really a genuinely a spectrum of, you might be thinking about a business. You might not even be thinking about a business right now. You might just be going to a 9 to 5. You might be just looking for a job, right?
Yeah.
All the way from I don't have a job to the other end of the spectrum, which is I have a successful business or I have multiple businesses. You're going to grab some value. So, and a lot of times that the path that you walked, how did you get your start?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I like how you said I was really focused, but I wasn't that focused. I just happened to go down a path. But for me, it started since I was a kid. I had parents that had normal middle-class jobs. They were, fixed paychecks. They were both teachers. And I watched them live paycheck to paycheck. And it really planted a seed inside of me of like, I don't want to live like that. I don't want to be stuck with only a certain amount of income. And then ironically, I found myself after college in my 30s, I'm in a cubicle and I'm getting paid great to build software, but I really was stuck with a fixed paycheck again. And it was then when I started really just trying things. Back then, Audible had just come out, so I started reading all kinds of books. Mm-hmm. And when I read a book like Rich Dad, Poor Dad and 4 Hour Workweek, my mind just like exploded. And I was like, man, I need to be doing more than just working in this cubicle. And so back then I tried everything you can think of to make extra money, from selling junk in my garage on eBay to building websites and flipping them on eBay to doing additional consulting. I mean, back then we called it moonlighting. Now they call it side hustling. I just started trying things. Like I always wanted to find a way to make more money because I looked at my world of cubicles and I thought, if I get promoted, I'm going to, go to that corner office, get paid a little bit more, have to work a lot more, and be really stressed out. And I'm like, I don't want that. And it set me on this journey to figure out how can you make money, especially using the internet. And then I eventually found guys like Frank Kern and Brendan Burchard and Jeff Walker, these guys that were doing information marketing. And that was the beginning of the path that led me to really have the opportunity to build Kajabi. But that's kind of the quick version to got me, to where I am now.
Awesome. I love that. I had a conversation. You mentioned money a couple of times. You wanted to just make more money. And yep. I did a Facebook Live today because, I've avoided talking about money because it's a sensitive subject. And a lot of times people, when they speak of it, they're speaking of it in a way that, oh, you should be living in a bigger house, or you should be right. And to me, that's such a douchey way to approach the concept of money. And so I dug into it a little bit, had multiple conversations. And one of the things that I realized is that the idea of money is, again, it's a spectrum, right? There's all the way at the one end, which is money's the root of all evil, to, people that are very pragmatic with it, that say money's just a tool for me to be able to advance the world that I want to live in. Right.
Yep.
And you state it in a non-emotional way. How did you develop, and a lot of this comes from how we're raised, the outside influences. What do you believe about making money?
Money is a result of putting energy towards something that has value. At a job, you can only do that to a certain level. You only have so many hours. You can only advance so high. But when you look at the world in a larger scale, what if you could create something that could affect more people? Or what if it could affect people while you're sleeping? I always wanted to think that way. So then eventually there was no restrictions on how much money I could make. Because to me, money is freedom. Money is new opportunity. Money is eventually your opportunity to make a dent in the world, make a real change. Because if you can bring in enough money into your family, into your household, it changes everybody around you. It changes your future of your kids. They can afford to go to college. Of course, sometimes people buy their way into things like USC.
We'll get into that in the politics.
We'll get into that later. But the reality is, I saw my parents struggle, and it was because they had these limited paychecks. They had limited mindsets. They definitely believed that money was the root of all evil. But I think money is just a number on the scoreboard. I believe we were made by a creator, and that creator wants us to create. And when we don't create, we're not following the way he or she made us. And to me, money is just something that we create, and it doesn't make you happy. It doesn't, it's just when you have it, you then have an opportunity to do more. And right. I like being on that side of it because I've been on the other side when you don't have it and it sucks.
Right. It's interesting that you said, the creator, because, I'm not a big religious guy, and I know you are as a foundation of who you are. That's a big piece of you. But for me, it's just, I believe that I think that there's something bigger than me out there.
Sure.
I use the word God. I've also used the terminology universe, in that perspective. One of the things, a fundamental piece, is because I decided to do a research, kind of like, you get interested in something, you dive into it and you want to know more about it. And it was the same thing for me in religion. And one of the conclusions that I came to is that whatever it is that created us, even if you believe we're some sort of accident of a universal accident, right? That there's something bigger out there. And that thing, in all mythology and in the Bible, in all teachings across the board, that thing, that entity is creative, right? To use your words. I mean, this is interesting. I've never spoken about this publicly, but a lot of times people look at that and they go, and then in one of the instances that's true is that we're all of that bigger entity. We're of God, right? We come from Jesus. Like whatever whatever belief system you come from, it's zero judgment, but we're of that entity. And one of the greatest things is if the universe continues to grow, or we just start, we know that it's growing. That means that there's an all creative creator, an all powerful creator that's continuing to create. And if we're of that, why wouldn't we understand as a fundamental belief that we are creative? Yep. Right? And we can create our own universes around us. And it sounds to me like that's your belief, and what you've actually executed in your own life is that, look, I've got this entity, which, I wish I would have had it when I was younger, but I came across this a little bit later. And my foundation, talk to me a little bit about your parents, because, my foundation was, as a little bit, is my adopted father was a really bad guy. I went to prison when I was 17 for attempted murder of me and my mom. And so I learned a certain way to look at the world from him and from that deal. And I had to unlearn all of that stuff. So I'm always interested, people that have a decent upbringing. What were your parents like? What was your upbringing like?
Well, I grew up very middle class in the middle of California. Central California is where all the farms are. I grew up on a farm. My dad had a 20-acre farm. He was a teacher, a football coach, and also a part-time farmer. So he was very old school. He was very all about hard work, putting his nose to the grind and just working super hard. And then my mom was a kindergarten teacher, so she's just very sweet, and everything's kindergarten to her. And, they were really good people, but they had such limiting beliefs. Their beliefs were that we just hope and pray. Hope and pray was their whole world. And I had a lot of that in me, which I do consider a lot of that good. However, now I know how much important action is beyond just hoping and praying. Hoping and praying gives you belief, and it allows you to know you can do the thing, but you still got to move forward. But in my world, it was every Saturday, it was like, get to work, go outside, work on the farm. Everything was about sports for my dad and performance. And I was a kid who stuttered my entire childhood. So for 10 years of my life, I could not talk. I would not be able to talk like this from about 9 years old until I was about 18. And then it started going away, and then pretty soon it was gone. And so in my world, I sat and I thought a lot. I was outside all the time on the farm, so I was dreaming about life. And I was obviously looking at things that were growing and that were part of creation. I witnessed all the seasons and how important the seasons are, and how we had a vineyard. So in the winter, everything dies, like things die. And we literally go and we cut off so many branches, like good branches. And by cutting, I have so many farming stories, but like by cutting off those good branches, that vine produced more fruit the next year. And I had tons of those kind of stories that were just pounded in my head. And then when I turned 18, I went and worked on this other like farmer's property. And he's this wise guy, and he would just plant seeds in our mind every morning, and then he would leave, and we worked for like 9 hours. And I learned so many lessons about nature and about God. I didn't realize back then, but they were about business. Mm-hmm. And that was the childhood I had, was dreaming about something else. Like I didn't want to stutter. That was the first dream. I didn't want to be trapped like my parents. I wanted to do great things in my life. And I think just being a dreamer, like that's what I do with my kids. I have an 11 and a 16-year-old. One of them wants to play for the Ducks, and the other one wants to be a Marvel movie director. And I'm always trying to encourage them to just dream, like plant the seeds of dreaming right now and stay in that mode. Like, I think that's what being an entrepreneur is you have dreams and then you go after them.
Amen.
And that is like, that's the secret weapon right there.
I love that mentality. And I love the fact that you connected the word action to it, right? Because to dream, you know, that book came out, The Secret, right?
Yes.
And even some of the authors who I've gotten to know now, they miss that fundamental piece of actually putting it into action. And so the two that I'm thinking of specifically then said, here's the mistake. And then they tie it together in their current teachings. Yeah. But it's interesting because, you know, you and I come from very different backgrounds.
Yeah.
And yet we've ended up in a similar place in life, in business, in belief systems. And I believe that there's principles that when you learn them, I just learned them later in life. Like I had to, and I learned them because I wanted to be a better example for my children. Right. My first son that was born changed my life. When he was born, I got out of, dealing drugs and collecting money and all the stuff that I used to be involved in instantaneously, because I had read, one of the things that happened with me was I got beat up a lot when, by my adopted father, and I would be locked in my room until my face would heal. And I had a Bible, right? And that in that Bible, something popped into my head that same week. I got stabbed in the chest the same week that my son was born. And it was the sins of the father. Right? Just there's a for those of you that are concerned, I don't know the numbers behind it, but there's a passage in the Bible that talks about sins of the father are born unto the children. Yep. And that essentially said to me that my actions were now going to affect and impact in a negative fashion. If I continued the life that I was leading, they would continue to impact negatively throughout generations of my life or of my family. And I wanted to stop that. And it's in it. And I'm glad that you told us the your father and how important, because to hear that makes the approach not easy, but easier, because you're ingrained, right? And I'm sure you're doing the same, like you just said with your kids. You're encouraging them as opposed to putting a weight on their back and having it weigh them down for something that maybe they'll figure out on their own, or they're just going to repeat that over and over and over again.
That's right.
So what's something that you learned when you were a kid that you do the opposite of now, that you teach your children the opposite of now?
Following the norm. My parents were very religious. So it was always like, make sure you do these things so that you're not sinning. You're not going to go to hell. Make sure you go to school, get good grades, then get a good job. Like, that was the path that they were taking me down. And that path led to like desperation, because I eventually did finish school. It took me a long time. I flunked out. A lot of things happened, but I finished school. Then I got the job. And like I said, I'm in the cubicle and I'm like, this is life. Like, it was depressing. And it set me into like a really crazy depression. I had also followed them and picked the first person to get married. And I just did what I thought I was supposed to do, which then made me a zombie sitting in traffic here in Southern California and just completely miserable, because I followed the path that I thought I was supposed to, that I thought was modeled after me. And I didn't realize that, no, I could go out and create the life that I want. Like, I have that power. I don't just pray and hope that one day it happens, but I can actually start journaling it down and visualizing it and taking steps and making changes. And back then I didn't know that. My parents made it seem like, this is the world. You've got a job, make sure you budget your money. And it was depressing to me.
Right. So what were some of, because again, this show is so valuable to people because that's the stuff that most people skip over. And most of the people that are listening to this have gone through that period of time, or maybe square in the middle of it, or they may encounter it on their way. Because I want to get into your book. I'm really anxious to get there, but I think setting the table for everybody about that time frame. So tell me, so tell us, what did you do? How long did, I mean, because I understand that, right? You get out of school, you get married, right? You get a job, all that. I understand that path very, very well. But tell me a little bit about what you did to cope when you started to fall into a depression. What were you doing to cope with it?
Oh man, eating too much, looking at porn all the time, like just escaping into that, which is weird that happened, but that was something that like, I felt like, it's funny because I mean, I'm a guy, porn happens or whatever, but nothing like when in the past, that was like such a part of my life that it was like I tried to escape that, or I'd eat too much, or it was a lot of just trying to escape. And depression, I mean, huge depression, considering suicide. When I had healthy kids, I was married and I was miserable, and I didn't realize that. I had a good job, I owned a home, but I was really miserable. And it was a dark time for sure. And I think I look at other people in the suburbs and people are still living that way. And I just can't believe that. Like it blows my mind that people choose to stay in that space and not make a change.
It's so powerful. I'm letting that sink in a little bit for the audience. Cause you know, what the main thing that you said there that's so powerful is that people try to escape. And there's so many routes of escape. There's so many vehicles of escape that people sometimes they're like, well, how come I'm not advancing? Well, like you said, porn is a big deal, right? That's a way for men to escape and to not have any accusations made against them, and to avoid the interaction with a real female, which is difficult for all of us, just, you know, for us men.
Yeah.
You know, it's never, oh, I've got this interaction with my wife or spouse or other, you know, significant other.
And I think I was avoiding that. I was avoiding the spouse. It's funny because we just recently went to Tony Robbins, and, you know, he talks about all those human drivers, and you can find those drivers in the weirdest places, even like porn, which is crazy. So,
well, and it's escaping. And I think that's something for everybody to think about during this segment is after the show, just sit down and write the things down that you know you're escaping into, right? You know, you're escaping it. I have a specific escape now that I chose, which is to escape away from all the people and the stuff that I'm doing. I go to the movies by myself and, you know, and enjoy a movie completely by myself with my phone off. Right. That's one of and because I found that was a lot healthier vehicle for me, because I think everybody needs to escape every now and again. Right. You've got to recharge, especially, you know, with men specifically, it's testosterone, right? Women recharge by talking and men recharge by not talking, which is a lot of the conflict.
Sure.
You know, there's a lot of the conflict in there. And so choosing your escape and what you're going to do is very, very important if you are radically chasing your dream, right? And this is where I want to transition just a little bit, because once you figure out how you're escaping, you start to look at the chunk of time that it takes up.
Oh yeah. It wastes a lot of time.
It wastes a lot of time. And there's genuine, like when we look at our real exchange in this world, it's not money, it's time.
It's time. It's your biggest asset.
And it's an equalizer.
Yeah.
You have 24 hours, the same 24 hours that anybody is listening to this. You have the same 24 hours that they do. And it's, what do you do with that 24 hours? Right. And it could be, you know, going to a job. And again, I want to, as we transition into what I think is a very dynamic blessing for the world that you bring, which is your book and your thought processes behind it, is that when you figure out whether you don't have a job, whether you're working at a job that you hate, whether you own your own business, whether you own several businesses, whether you're a place in life where now you're going to pour yourself into philanthropic type stuff and giving back, one of the key components has to be, what is it that you're chasing, right? and get very specific about that. I use the example, one of the bigger examples, and I want to get an example from you too, is that when we were working on the consulting side of our business at Anton J, we went in, and a lot of what we do is gamification. You can't gamify a business until you understand why people are playing the game, right? And so we do a lot of that work in the very beginning when we're working with a company, and we sit down, and it's always like this. We say, why are you working here, right? If we could give you Mickey's magic wand and wave it over your position, what would that produce for you? And the immediate bullshit answer that everybody gives back is, I want to provide for my family.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Or I want to be a good employee, right? They give you the bullshit answer that's on the surface that they think you want to hear. And we don't want to hear that. We're looking for deeper. You know, what is it that if we could help you, because if we don't know what emotionally moves them, how can I build the job, right, to be able to provide that for them? And that's the whole key behind gamification. And so one of the most impactful ones, we were doing this conversation, and it was difficult. I was like, dude, tell me. And he's like, well, I want to send my wife to Hawaii. No, you don't. I know you do, but no, you don't. Like, that's not the thing, right? Well, I want to do a good job here. Yeah, I know you do, but that's not the thing. And then he stopped and he sat back, and a tear started to come down his face. And he said, you know what, Jason? He goes, I'd like to take my boy to the Final Four, and I'd like to go to the NBA Finals. And just weeping, and everybody, like, we had no idea. Everybody in the room was like crying, and we're like, what? We don't even know why we're crying. Because it just was so deep. And finally, when everybody stopped blubbering, I said, why is that so impactful for you? And he said, look, my dad for years and years and years wanted to take me to the NBA Finals, wanted to take me to the Final Four, and could never afford it. And he says, something that I've always, wanted to do. And here I am, 45, 46 years old, and I still haven't done it. And if I don't achieve that, I feel like I'm letting my dad down. I feel like I'm letting my son down. And he's wearing this mantle of something that he really wants to do that he hadn't allowed himself to admit to himself, because he's a very giving, most people are very giving people. And he hadn't allowed himself, because then what if he failed, right? That's another big piece of it. What if I fail when I go? What if I can't do it? What if I'm not smart enough? What if I'm not pretty enough? What if I'm not handsome enough? What if I don't speak the right words? And then then we took that and we built that in, and we were able to figure out his job and how he could achieve that. And that opens up so much. So I want to give me some or one powerful story for you that really hits people in the gut, or hit you in the gut. Hate to put you on the line.
No, I know. I mean, there's so many powerful stories that have. You mean like the things that I want, or like the things I accomplished? I mean,
well, yeah. I mean, just
understand
from the emotional standpoint.
Yeah.
Because for you to be able to get where you've gotten and do the things that you've done, you have to. People that have never achieved at the level that you've achieved, they think, oh my God, he's lucky. Right?
No, not at all.
No. And it never, maybe not never. Some people may be born with, really great resources, but it's what you do with those resources. The example was given to me today. Well, what happens to most people that win the lottery? They're broke 3 years later.
That's right.
And so it has nothing to do with the money. It has to do with what you're doing with that tool in your own life. Are you growing it, or are you shrinking it? So what's the emotional kick for you that puts you through those dark days, those challenges, the things that you've had with partners, the things that you've had with a job, a bad marriage? What was the thing that you saw in the future, and where are you headed?
For me, it was always about growth and expansion. When I was a kid, it was like, I don't want to stutter one day. I don't want to struggle like my parents. So it was never about more money, even though money is part of that. It was never about buying that house. It was just always about having these milestones that I was heading after. And then I would get there, and then I'm like, okay, I'm going to push myself even further. I'm going to go here. And some of the biggest, most significant ones was when I turned 40, I am 46 now. My dad lost the farm that we grew up on. He financially made some bad mistakes. Next thing you know, he signed these papers. He's basically sold the farm for pennies because of the debt it had. And I'm like, Dad, what happened? Like, how did you do that? It killed me. And so for the next couple of years, I'm like, all right, I've got to grow my business. I've got to do this. And then I was able to go back and buy this incredible farm that my parents live on to this day. And those are the kind of things that drive me, is to have the freedom to do powerful things for my family, to do powerful things for other people. Like I said, sometimes I go to events and I meet people that'll walk up to me and say, I'm a millionaire because of you, because of Kajabi. And that's powerful. Like, I want to do more of that. I want to do things that I know affect other people in a great way, because it just gives you so much fuel. Like, it's way more powerful than money in your bank account, than a nice car or whatever. It's just about the opportunity to give back in a way that changes people's lives.
I love that.
I think I was desperately wanting that as a kid, and it was more about the stuttering than it was about money. And I always want to go back and find ways to help that kid. Like, and these are ways I feel like I'm doing it.
That's beautiful. And you are. And I remember, that brings up a memory for me. I mean, I remember, we would have to, we would basically have a very small amount of money, for back to school clothes. Right. Mm-hmm. And it was a big driver for me, it was a big driver. And we would get, just hand-me-downs, and we'd go to Red Cross and all those places that, thank God, they existed. But then I would go and, and kids would make fun of me and all this other kind of stuff when I would go. And I remember one year, my grandma and grandpa, they said, you do your own shopping this year. Do your own shopping. And I had enough money to get a brand new Denver Broncos t-shirt, a brand new pair of pants, and a brand new pair of tennis shoes. And they're like, you just spent all your money. And I go, I don't care. Like, I'm going to walk in on day one wearing brand new clothes for the first time in my life. And since then, that's been a driver, for me in my own life and then it switches. So those people that have listened to me before will have heard this. You new viewers will understand what he just said. And my belief system is in perfect alignment, because I believe that we're put on this earth to become as good as we possibly can. Right. Mm-hmm. And that's learning, that's reading books, that's going to seminars, that's you're talking to a gentleman here that built a multi-million-dollar company that just last week or 2 weeks ago went to Tony Robbins to further his education. Right. Yep. And a lot of times people think that when you're at that level, you're just like, oh, I'm done. No, you start to die.
Not even close.
That's when you start drinking and you lose that passion, you lose it for life. But I believe that we're put on this earth to become as good as we can be for the purpose, the inherent, intrinsic purpose of serving other people. That's my simple belief. Religion aside, all of those other, so that every day I'm challenging myself. And then I know that true joy and happiness comes from serving other people. Mm-hmm. And what you said was, there was a period of time where you had to go to work and you're like, I'm getting the fucking farm back. You probably wouldn't speak that way, but
sometimes,
yeah. But I'm going to get that farm back. And then you went to work and you made that happen. And I'm sure that that's a big component. So of your book and what you teach people is have something that lights you up like that.
Oh yeah.
And you'll surprise yourself. Right? You'll surprise yourself at what you're capable of. And then you can never go backwards. Oh, if I was able to buy a farm in a couple of years' time, what else am I capable of?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. And something I think about too, about like these like things that I want to do. When I was a kid and I was on the farm, I was not only talking to God, like, please help me speak, but like, I would think about if Henry Ford had the ideas he had and Edison had the ideas he had, God, could you give me ideas? Like, do these ideas come from you? Like, if you're the creator, did you inspire those ideas? Can you give me an idea? And this is coming from a kid that struggled in school, and I was terrible. And I think about that to this day, about constantly trying to tune in to what God is trying to tell me, and then to be brave enough to go do it. Because every time I've done that in the past, powerful things have happened. And I'm constantly trying to figure out, how can I hear God better? Like going to Tony Robbins, that was a great way to like shed a bunch of baggage I was dealing with. And taking chances and like reading more books. All these things allow you to do these things that are beyond where you are.
Yeah. Well, I love that because you're leading by example, and I think that that's missing in the marketplace. The whole reason this show exists is because there was so many fakers out there, and that are building. Oh, call me up and and sign up for this, that, and the other, and you're going to be a multi-bazillionaire, right? Yeah, I know. I love the look on your face because it says everything. Those of you that are just listening to this, Ed with a smirk on his face.
They're everywhere. They drive me crazy.
They're everywhere. They're literally everywhere. Blah blah blah, and they're in front of their their helicopter that they actually just rented for $125 for the hour to fly around Maui, right?
That's right. Exactly.
So it's we're not here to tear people down, but we are here to say that the reason why people like Travis exist and are quiet. Like, he has a quiet personality. When you're out with him, he's not rambunctious. He's not trying to get attention drawn on him. And those are the kind of people that you want to seek out. In a crowd, you want to find the person that is speaking the least because they probably know the most and they're probably most willing to help you, right? And that's what I have found to be true about Travis and just the little bit that I've gotten to know about him and the people that you hang out with and a couple of people that I talked to that knew you before we did this show. You're very well respected. And
thank you.
Thank you. And take us to your book.
Okay.
And the premise behind it. You've already kind of told us the premise, and I want to set the stage just a little bit better. In this day and age, we're living currently in an era where we have 1 million more jobs than we have people to do them available to them, right? We have the lowest amount of unemployment in the history of the world, and we have the most opportunity available to us. And we have a lot, you have the two warring tribes right now that the world's coming to an end and the world is perfect, and neither one of them are right. Okay. Neither one of them are right. So what this show does is we talk about the messy middle, which is, one side or the other. But when you're looking at building You Inc., when he starts to talk and starts to give you some of this feedback, I want you to listen, because even if you are an employee, you have your own business inside of that organization. You have your own business. You have a business idea inside of you, of course, to step out and do your own thing, but you also own your own business in the company that you work for, because you are creating value in return for cash. And if you could do that better, and you have a reasonably intelligent owner or CEO, they will understand if you go into their office and say, look, I want to make more money, and here's the things that I think that I am capable of. If I help produce this result, will you give me part of the spoils? Right? I would always listen to somebody like that. That's why we built our gamification. So talk a little bit about, because this is important, this book. I want everybody to go out and buy this book. It's on Amazon. It's an Amazon bestseller. It's done really, really well because it's practical information and something that I think we need to hear really, really deeply in our hearts and our spirits right now to be able to move you from where you are to where you want to go. So tell us a little bit about the book, and you already set the table for why you believe that way. But tell us some of the key takeaways and why somebody should buy your book. What's the information in it?
Yeah, so the book is called You Inc., and the idea is that everything about you could become a business. And I start the book with this the quote from Jay-Z where he says, "I'm not a businessman, I'm a business man." And it's about focusing on your life as if it was a business. And just like Jason said, things you do at your job, things you've been through, can potentially be a business. And this concept came to me as I was building Kajabi. Ironically, I was led to build Kajabi, and then after I built it, I realized this movement that was happening where people were taking what they know and turning it into businesses. And that's what the book is about. It's going to walk you through these things called the 4 Ps. And these are the key components of your life.
Before you get into the 4 Ps, because I think it's important, we haven't done this yet. Tell everybody that doesn't know what Kajabi is. What is Kajabi?
All right. Kajabi is an online platform that allows you to upload video content and then plug it into a shopping cart that then will give you the power to sell this content. And so people are selling content on everything you can think of, from weight loss to yoga to how to fly a helicopter to how to get out of debt, to how to use Microsoft Excel. Everything you can think of, they're monetizing this knowledge. And we live in a world now, thanks to things like YouTube and Google. Every time you need to know something, what do? You go and you start Googling it, you watch YouTube videos, and you learn it yourself. And Kajabi allows individuals to then monetize and sell that knowledge. And like we were saying, people have made over $600 million doing this. Average people going from zero to millionaire. And I've heard a lot of their stories. Their stories are in the book. There's 20 stories in the book of real people. In fact, our good friend, Dr. V, is in the book, his story. And it's incredible. I mean, I would have these moments where I would be interviewing customers just like this, and we both would get goosebumps or we would get teared up. And that's when I realized, I was like, wow, this is way more powerful than me building this business. There's a movement here. And it was amazing to see it happen. Like, I'm getting goosebumps now as I talk about it, because when you share what you've been through and what you're good at, not only does it change your world because income starts coming in, but you're going to change other people's world. And that is powerful. I mean, the stories are incredible. And like I said, they're all in the book. And
so that's why people need to read the book. Let's tease them. Now, let's not give away. We're just giving you the smell of the pizza, people. Right.
That's right.
And we connect that in our world. We say, fall in love with the outcome of your client. Right. And a lot of people don't do that. They're there. I got to pay my rent. I got to pay this. I got to pay that. Not understanding that the premise is serve first, reward later. Right. Serve first, reward later. Cool. So let's get into some of the practical application that they can take off from this show today. What are the 4 Ps?
Well, and let's go straight with that. Serve first. You serve yourself first. This is how this entire process starts. Is you're going to start with you, and you're going to focus on what you did. And these are the 4 Ps in your profession, like your job. Yep. Like I said, people have made money doing Microsoft Excel, how to fly helicopters, getting out of debt, all kinds of things like that. The next thing is passion. Are you good at playing golf? Are you good at flying drones? There's even ladies that made like $800,000 doing calligraphy, like teaching you how to do calligraphy. Yeah. It's nuts. So the things you love, you could actually monetize, and it's incredible. The last 2 are problems and pain. And this is where the real kicker happens. This is where the magic happens, because our pain and our problems, the fact that you're watching this or listening to this, you've overcome those things, or you're maybe in the middle of it and you're dealing with it, but you're learning how to live and maybe live beyond those things. And what if you could take the things you learn and share them with other people? And that's happened where people in the book have shared getting over divorce, dealing with massive back pain and avoiding like back surgery, being a professional singer and losing your voice. People have learned how to rehabilitate their voice, and then they share it with other people. There's even a guy who teaches you how to start a landscaping service. He's actually #1. If you search how to do a landscaping service on YouTube, Keith Kalfas, he's going to come up. Keith has told me stories about how all he does is teach you how to start your business, but people have contacted him and said, Keith, your videos literally saved my life. I was in that moment where I was like going to end my life, and for whatever reason, I'm on YouTube. I watch your silly video, and it changed everything. And that's the real power of all of this, is when we take what we've known and what we've experienced and share it with someone else, powerful things happen.
I love that. It's so powerful and such a deeply needed message today, right? Where everybody's there's a lot of very well-funded people, there's a lot of industry out there right now that gets paid for us to hate each other. Right.
Sure.
And business, as we transition from business and talking about those valuable lessons, into kind of the political arena, I'm not so concerned with who you support or whatever, but politically it's an equalizer, because in business, you can't be racist. You can't be sexist. You can't be homophobic. You can't be like those kind of things, and end up causing you problems and challenges. You can have your own beliefs about whatever you want to have, but in business, you're serving, and that's the core component that's missing from politics today. All they do is constantly, what are they doing? They're out there making promises and gathering money so that they can win their reelection, so that they can go out and make more promises. And that's a challenge, right? We now have a business guy that's in the White House. Whatever you think about him, they're looking at shit differently. right?
There's no doubt they are, for sure. I wish more business people were in politics. In fact, that's how it started. If you look at our history as a country, many of the men, and unfortunately there was only men at that time that could do that because of how the country was set up, but they would come forward and they were business owners, and they would come and serve, whether it was in Philly or whether it was in Washington, and they would serve to make this country better, to create a space to where we could actually pursue happiness.
Yeah.
And
we
it's gotten so far off of that.
Well, and we left. We literally fought a war to get away from a ruling class that thought they were smarter than us, that thought they could control things better than us. And now all of a sudden, because we have abdicated that responsibility to professional politicians, which is nothing more than an oligarchy, which is nothing more than a ruling class, right?
Oh yeah, because they make promises that then people vote based on those promises to get those free things, to get them elected. That's not a good space for everybody, even the people that are getting the free things, because eventually it's going to run out.
I mean, obviously, giving shit away for free.
No, I mean, obviously, I'm sitting here talking about a book called You Inc., but the reality is, the more freedom you have as an individual, and when you're incentivized to do great things for yourself, your family, and then other people, all of society would be better if we could somehow nurture more of that and not be in the space of blaming other people, pitting groups against each other. In fact, it's funny, a lot of that was when you're going through the Tony Robbins stuff, you could see how easily every society gets in that space of like hating and blaming and like putting it on other people. But the reality is, when we focus on ourselves first, like make myself better, fix the things that are wrong with me, and then how can I help make my family better? What can I do to make them better? What about my neighborhood? How could I make that better? And then my city, and just keep going as far. And with the internet, we can affect people all over the world. And unfortunately, politics doesn't do that anymore. They only restrict us. They're supposed to protect us and do that kind of stuff. But it seems it's so much about restriction. Like here's another good example of how I see politics and how much, because politics drives me crazy. I was doing jury duty 2 years ago, which in Orange County, man, once you do jury duty once, you're on the radar and you're doing it all the time. I'm up in the Orange County State Building. It's like 14 stories high in Santa Ana. And it's the break, and I'm looking out over the parking garage, and it is filled with homeless people. There must be 500 homeless people in there. And I'm sitting here like, wait, I'm at the capital of Orange, like the county, and they like had porta potties for them and trash cans. I'm like, that's cool, but why aren't they down there talking to them? Like, in California right now, I don't know why it's like this, but there's homeless people everywhere. Yeah. And if I was a politician, I would be down there talking to them. Like, why are you here? Okay, it's drugs. It's you know, lost your job. It's mental health. It's whatever it is. Survey and solve. Like, why aren't we doing that? Like that's a passion for me. You talk about philanthropy. That is something both my wife and I are going to try to figure out. How can we help get rid of homelessness? Because it is, I think politicians in California are allowing it to happen because they know the current administration, it makes them look bad. Because there's so many homeless people in California. I don't understand why now versus other times when the economy is a lot better and it's a lot easier to get a job.
Well, let's take from the business world, right? You incentivize the activity that you want to see.
Yes.
Right? In that one sentence, you incentivize the activity that you want to see. And if we keep giving money to politicians to do nothing and to solve no problems, then they're going to do more of that. That's why you have the big fundraisers. That's why they're spending, you know, if they've got a 4-year term, they're spending 3 years and 342 days of it, you know, trying to raise money, because we as a people have accepted it, right? I mean, what's happening in Venezuela, which is a tragedy for that beautiful country.
Yeah.
The people that were there voted that in, expecting to be given things for free, right? They voted it in. The people did. And now they're trying to take it back. And that ingrained power, they got all the money, they got all the power, they got all of the guns, they got all of the stuff. So now their people can't fight back against it. And they're literally having to eat, you know, and kill zoo animals to feed their family. Aside from the 3 million that could get out of the country, right?
I know. That's the scary thing, is you say they voted in, they made that decision. And there's a part of me that worries about that, but then there's a part of me that knows the internet is the great equalizer.
Right.
No matter what the bigger sites try to do with free speech and stuff, the internet removes all myths.
True.
I believe that religion is different now than it was when I was a kid because of the internet. Because when I was a kid, there was 3 TV channels in the local newspaper, and that was it. Yeah. All information went through that cycle. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people here that don't know much about anything. Right. Like as I sold my company, I was so grateful to have these checks that were massive. And so like I bring it to the bank and the people are like, holy crap. Right. And I remember I made the comment, well, yeah, 50% of it goes to the government. Like, what are you talking about? I'm like, yeah, once you make a certain point, you start getting taxed outrageously. And this lady had never even heard of that concept before. And that's what's hard, is when someone can make a decision for everything, but they don't know everything. And right. I wish there was a way to where people could know more, because the more you know, the better you're going to choose whoever you're going to choose when it comes to politics. I mean, bottom line, but we live in a world where most people don't really know what's going on.
Yeah. I agree with that. And that's what, you know, the people that follow this show really, they tag themselves the Misfit Nation, right? Because it's just a bunch of people who have fucked up in their life and then figured it out to a certain degree, and don't want to be out there being beat up by people for the mistake that they made 10 years ago or 5 years ago or whatever. I made the mistake, you know, I apologized to the person that I made the mistake with. And then I've started to rebuild my life, right? We actually trademarked a term recently called guilt reparations, right? Which let's say you and your wife had your first wife, right? You guys had a problem, and then, you know, and then you get into the business world, and there's a rumor that, oh, your marriage ended, you know, it was terrible, blah, blah, blah. Now, why does that become anybody else's business, right? It's guilt reparations. You made it right however you had to make it right with your ex-wife.
Yeah, I make it right every month when I write a check.
Right. Exactly. And that's the only person. And then why in the hell should we have to apologize to anybody else? Because nobody else was impacted. And it's guilt reparations. We're supposed to go back and feel guilty for something that didn't impact you whatsoever, right? And so the idea behind that is that the Misfit Nation's listening to things that you're saying, and they are educating themselves, right? You look at repressive regimes, right? Why was it illegal in this country for a period of time for women to even be able to pick up a book, right? Why was it?
To grow. They didn't want them to know more.
To learn, right? Yeah. And so now you've got the internet. Now you look at repressive regimes around the world. Why don't they want Google, right? Why don't they want the internet? Why in North Korea can nobody have a computer and get that information, right? I was doing some work down in Africa, in Ghana, and, you know, we were down there doing some stuff, and I stopped along the side of the road to buy some gold, right, from this little kid that was on the side of the road, and he was pulling it out of the river and stuff like that. And I was just there. I'll buy some gold from the kid. And I was like, well, how much is it? And I knew kind of London spot on what the price was at the time for an ounce of gold. And I offered him, I don't remember what I offered him. I think at the time it was like $800. And he goes, $800. He goes, no, 1,200. And I'm like, what? Why 1,200? He said, he pulled out his cell phone and he goes, London spot price. We're talking in the jungle.
That's pretty awesome.
In Africa, right?
Sure.
So it's the great equalizer. So if you are ignorant now, and I'm not talking about repressive regimes where you can't get this stuff right now, but I'm talking in America, especially in Europe, in places where freedom of information is fairly available to you, and you choose to be ignorant. Now that's on you, right? That's on you. And the great opportunity is that you can go to all of these places and learn all these different things to be able to do whatever it is that you want to do to make that extra income, right? It's available. Best economy in the history of mankind womankind. Sorry, I have to say that because I get hammered on in the history of man and womankind is happening under your nose. Right? It's happening under your nose right now. What are you going to do about it? My suggestion is that you understand the great equalizer is you being able to outserve somebody at what you do well. And that will provide for you and your family, and be very specific about your outcome. And then lastly, make sure you get the book You Inc. because it's going to help you with those tools along the way. And I don't push very many books. I don't push very many people's stuff. Everybody knows that, but I believe that this is one of the greatest books that you can put in your hands if you're thinking about, moving your life forward. So let's talk a little bit about, once you cover those bases, right? The hierarchy of needs, right? That they talk about. The hierarchy of needs basically is a triangle. You can Google it. We're not going to go deep into it today, but the basis is, once you have a roof over your head, you're feeding your family, you've got the basics covered. What's that next level? And what I have found is the trajectory of speed towards us and where we want to be is service. And once you get past serving yourself and you know, basics and serving your family and certain level, to elevate yourself to factory to out, because you prior with that there's that are out there that are trying to tie it. And one of my clients just wrote an article in Forbes about people who are doing this the wrong way, right? Is Cheryl Snap Connor. Those of you that don't know her should know her. She's amazing, one of the top PR people in the world. And so she wrote this article that said, if you're doing philanthropy to get, you're doing it wrong, and you're costing your company money, right? You're appearing as a douchebag in the marketplace. That's my language, not hers.
Exactly. Okay? Yeah.
If you figure out amongst your team and what your heart is for, and what you really want to do to impact. You said homeless, right? I would love anything that you want to do, because I'm more of a resourcer of those charities rather than having a charity of my own. We did $3 million we raised for charity last year. And homelessness is one of those big things that I'm looking for the right place to try to resource and to try to help. So I'm with you on that. But talk a little bit about, once you get those bases covered, and and I know you're a humble guy and you don't want to talk specifically about what you do, how much money you give. I know that. But for the audience, talk a little bit about the experience. What drives you to give philanthropically? What does it do for you personally? And what are some of the things that you've seen when you do give?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is I always want to give because I do believe that the ideas and wealth I got came from God. And so I want to be like, give wherever I can, especially when it comes to things that have to do with where I go to church. That's important to me. The next thing is I want to give and do things that I know changes people's lives. I think when we first got on, I talked to you about how I went to Africa. I actually first went with Saddleback Church. They're like, you need to go to Rwanda. I went to Rwanda, and we were volunteering with this orphanage there in Rwanda. And if you guys know anything about Rwanda, they had a huge genocide. 1 million people were killed in 90 days, which left hundreds of thousands of orphans in the country. And as I was on this trip, it was more about, we were giving, we were doing things, but I was like, what if we could create something bigger there? Like a way to actually impact these kids' lives. Because at this point, they're teenagers, they're just getting in their 20s. And so we had this crazy idea that what if we built a coffee shop? And this was it was such a dumb idea at the time. I don't know why we thought we should do this. But we kind of planted that seed, and we're like, all right, we are going to build a coffee shop here in Rwanda. And it was right next to this university. And we knew that if we could build this place that students would want to come to, and we could have the local church kind of help manage and facilitate that, then these kids could learn how to manage a business, how to manage inventory, how to do marketing, how to work with money. They could work on their English skills. And it really allowed us to create this space that impacted a lot of their lives, where they went on to getting jobs in hotels. And in Rwanda, a job in a hotel is a great living. Like being able to speak English and serve and make tips, like you're doing really well there if you're making money like that. And over 3 years of just struggling and traveling back and forth and buying equipment and driving 4 hours across the jungle and trying to plug it in, and the outlets are wrong and it would blow up. It was such an amazing experience to build something that impacted someone else's life. Like that's the kind of giving I love. That's why when I see homelessness here, I'm like, what's the solution? Like, sure, I could keep writing big checks to companies, but what could I do that would change it? Like, whether it's food, whether it's drug rehab, whether it's mental health or job training or housing, I don't know. That's why it bothered me that day when I'm right at the place where all the politicians live and they're not out there nonstop figuring out how can they help them and fix the problem, because I don't know if anybody focuses on that. There's a lot of great organizations that feed and provide clothing and do a lot of things, but how can we actually change? Like, that's the kind of charity I want to be involved in. And as I expand and my wealth expands, that's where I want to put my resources towards.
Awesome. Well, whatever you figure out, obviously, count me in as a resource, brother. I'm with you.
I appreciate that.
So I want to, for the audience on that perspective, you heard Travis say two really powerful things in everything that he just talked about in philanthropy. And it also can be parlayed into your business, to where you work, with your relationships, with whatever it is that you do. He said two key components. He said, what if, ? Right? What if I could, right? What if that I would write that down and put it on a poster board and put it up on your computer, and have it on your screensaver. What if? Because that opens up a portion of your brain that now becomes curious, right? It opens up that area that allows you to be creative, as Travis talked about in the very beginning of the show, that creativity is what has driven him, and the heart to serve, and his ability of being in an industry that he's been able to tie these things together. It's interconnectedness. And the other thing that he said was, how can I, right? When he was thinking about, the homeless scenario, how can I do something different that would impact somebody else's life? So if you add into your life just those two things, what if I could, and how can I? Those are two really great statements. If you got nothing else from this show and you implemented those two thought processes, those two statements into your life, I think you'd be much better off. What do you think, Travis?
I think so. I think that it starts with you. It starts with yourself. Like, when I was in that cubicle, that's what I thought, like, what if I could do this? And, the next book I'm working on, it's called You Inc. Side Hustles. And it's about expanding beyond your paycheck and doing side hustles and how many opportunities there are. Because it really is about making a little bit more here and then realizing, oh crap, I'm wasting too much time. What if I did this? And growing and changing the world is the same way. You change your own life, and then you can change everybody else's life around you.
I love that. And everybody that knows me, follows my career, knows that my private equity business is just a group. I had to figure out how to have a business and not be there, because I didn't like to have to be anywhere. Right. And so my side hustle turned into a private equity business. Right.
That's awesome.
And then that
happens all the time.
It happens all the time. And that turned into a consulting business to teach people in business that were good people how to make more money, get more time, so they could do more good. Right. It's the pebble in the pond, brother. And that's where I think you and I are completely aligned. And I'm looking forward to our friendship many, many years into the future.
Definitely.
I already know you're fun to hang out with, because we had a great time in Vegas, which started from Dr. V and his heart to serve. And we were both there to serve and to speak and teach. And I'm glad our paths crossed. So as we wrap up the show, just tell us a little bit about, because we talk about vitality on the show, not for the purposes of having a six pack, but for the purposes of, how do you maintain your optimum level of vitality and energy to be able to do the things that you want to do with your life? What are some of the life hacks that you've done to keep yourself in shape and to keep your energy levels high and your mental clarity high? What are some of those hacks?
Yeah. I mean, energy is huge. Energy is the thing that I focus on the most, because we only have so much time. And if I can have energy throughout the day, I can do more things. And ironically, the first one is going to be remove things from your life that are toxic. I know that when I go way back and I was looking at porn all the time and my life was terrible, there was things I needed to remove. I needed to get divorced. And that was hard for me to swallow, because I came from a Christian home and it was such a bad thing. But you need to remove toxic people from your life. And it does not mean people need to get divorced. That's just an example. But it could be a friendship. It could be a business. It could be a job. They're toxic. And we look at toxicity like mold in our house. People freak out about that. but they'll work at a job that's totally draining them. That's the first thing, is remove that. The next thing is I meditate every morning. Like, and I just, now I'm doing the Tony thing, the whole breathing thing. Like I love those kind of things.
Priming, baby, priming.
Exactly. But I start off my day, in a positive state of the what ifs. Like, I have a journal that's right here with me right now, and I'm writing down things all the time of the things that I would like to try to do one day. And then I might write down where I'm stuck, and then what can I do to change to get unstuck in those areas. That's huge. And then the last one for me, exercise. I live in Rancho Santa Margarita up in the foothills, and for me it's mountain biking, getting outside. I love that. And then I can continue to meditate while I'm out there. You put on some headphones, listen to Tony or somebody, and I've had the best revelations out there in the like the stillness of nature. Takes me back to when I was a kid, probably.
I love that. I love that. See, simple things, right? Simple things in an otherwise jam-packed life, right? There's kids, there's the wife, there's travel, there's your business, there's philanthropic stuff. You are a busy man. And I just want to say thank you. Everybody that wants to check out and get to know more about Travis, it's travisrosser.com, and that's TravisRosser.com. And go find his book, support this man. He's doing good work in the world. He's changed a lot of lives, and I know he's working on some secret stuff that he can't tell anybody about, right, but I'm sure they're going to be massively impactful. And just let me know. I should be on speed dial for when you can talk about it.
Definitely. Right? Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. And I just, because I know that we're going to get a lot of feedback on this and how valuable it is, I just want for the Misfit Nation, for on their behalf, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come here and talk to us and to teach us and to give us some guidance, because I think it's really, really going to help and change some lives. And I really, really appreciate it, brother.
Thank you. It's been great being here.
My pleasure. All right, man. Have an awesome day, and I'll see you sometime in the future.